Welcome to the Herald's Horn. This is episode 30, and this is also roughly 1 year of the Herald's Horn. Thank you so much, everyone, for all the awesome support over the year. And if I have my release date correctly, this is going to come out right around Christmas. So, and pretty much all of our other holidays are out of the way now, too. So I hope you have a great Christmas, great other holidays, a great happy new year. On this episode, Dan and I are taking it a little easy. We are just chopping it up about kind of the whole year, a little more laid back. We're going to talk about some of the biggest news pieces of the year. We're going to talk about our favorite sets, our favorite cards, and our least favorite set as well. After the break, I am joined by the one and only Brian Coval to discuss his takes on the legacy bannings and also where, if anywhere, the legacy archetypes and metagame has kind of shifted and settled now that the bans have been passed for a little over a week at the time of our conversation. Thanks so much for listening. As usual, I'm going to take a second right here to plug the Patreon. At the Herald's Horn, we're supported by you and one or two advertisers that are very generously working with us. But if you would love to practically be an advertiser of the Herald's Horn, you can support us on Patreon. We would love to have you come to the Discord and tell Dan all about what exciting weekend plans you have. All right, let's get into the episode. Hello, it's time for the Herald's Horn, part of the One Shot Network. My name is Cal Jones, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Hello, Dan.
Hello, Dan. It's our first ever record 2 episodes in one day extravaganza. How you feeling?
So sleepy. I just realized between recordings I forgot to eat today, too.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, we're going to get real punchy on this one. Run the song. And welcome back. It's time for the news. The news is going to be a little bit different this time. Breaking news. It's 1 year of the Herald's Horn. That's right. Right around the time when this episode will release is when around when I released episode 0, the pilot, blah, 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 episode of the show. I made it just to see if I could make it. And then I decided to release it earlier than I said I was going to start the show, and it's a whole mess. There's actually been 31 episodes of the Herald's Horn. We don't really talk about it, but it's been 1 year. Dan, you've been on the ride the whole time. How do you feel?
I feel good, although I guess I'm pissed off that I never got the jacket.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Ancient show lore at this point, because I forgot to bring it up for many episodes in a row. I have honestly only thought about it again just now as you asked me that. But it's been fantastic. It's been a very fun time. It's been really cool to see the growth of this show over the past year and how many people have enjoyed it. So if you're one of the people listening, please send in your rankings. I'm always interested in people's rankings of who your favorite and least favorite host is. I don't care which one you think is the most mid. Although I'll be able to
top
suss it out.
and bottom only.
Yeah.
My third
it's the tops
favorite
and bottoms
host, Cal.
podcast. We've always said that.
And well, since I believe this is going to be the final episode of the year, don't quote me on that. This will probably be the final episode of the year. And since it's also been a year of the Herald's Horn, I figured it is a great time to do 2024 Year in Review. The Year in Review show. The Year in Review show is presented by Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. After all, you need to clear out space for all of the new cards you get gifted this year. Brought to you by the beloved team behind Card Hoarder, Card Conduit does the hard work of getting you the best buy list prices available for your cards. All you have to do is send them one package, taking advantage of your selection of their 3 services. I use the sorted service, which lets you collate and enter cards ahead of time in return for the lowest fees. Don't worry, you can just send them a huge box of random unsorted cards too, and they'll figure it out. I've used Card Conduit myself 5 different times to thin out my collection and have had exclusively great experiences. Use code HORN at checkout or use the link in the podcast description to get 10% off your fees and help support the show. All right, for this Year in Review show, we're going to do kind of two halves of the show, probably be more like a 2/3 of the show and a third of the show, but we're going to kind of talk about like the biggest news pieces of the year, the largest shakeups, kind of look back on those. And then we're also going to have the Herald Horn Awards. No, just kidding. It's not the Herald Horn Awards. Maybe another year, but we're going to talk about our favorite sets, our favorite cards, our least favorite sets, that kind of stuff. that kind of fun Magic the Gathering content. So
I'm legitimately upset that there's not going to be a Herald's Horn award, because I definitely thought that's where I would get the jacket.
The Herald's Horn Award. Most appearances, Cal Jones.
Woo!
Most co-host appearances, Emma Partlow.
Woo! Is that true? Did Emma beat me?
No, it was definitely you, Dan.
I was going to say, I'll be if that's true. I don't know why, because like she would have won fair and square, but I don't feel that way in my heart.
I think I was on the most episodes.
I do think that in my heart.
Most active in the Discord server. Dan.
That's got to be me. Yeah, I say good morning a lot.
All right, so let's move on to the biggest news pieces, the largest shakeups, all that kind of stuff. These aren't in any particular order. I kind of just threw them on here as they came to mind. And I think a lot of them kind of are kind of more on the overarching trend of the year rather than just being like one specific thing. So I'm gonna start here. Magic Spotlight Series introduction. The Magic Spotlight Series is going to be a series of events that each focus on a specific tournament, a specific format. And a lot of people have, I think correctly, kind of posited them a bit as the return of Grand Prix, just kind of a one-off tournament with some really good prizes, maybe some integration into the larger OP structure. We have seen that to be important for people to care about these things, so I hope that includes this. We have not yet seen our first Spotlight Series event, but it is almost time. January 3rd through 5th, 2025 in Atlanta. That will also be standard. I'm pretty excited for that. It's being run by Star City Games. They run a pretty tight ship. I'm sure it'll be a good time. And like I said on the last episode, talking about the Arena Championship 7, happy to just keep seeing Standard get some time in the limelight. We're going to see a lot of Standard in 2025, starting with it being featured in the very first Magic Spotlight Series event. Dan, I'm sure you'll be at every single one of these.
You know me, traveling man. Yeah, no, this is very exciting. I hope that they go well. I think that the coverage and the advertising is really going to make or break this series, but with SCG covering the coverage at the very least, I think that it is going to shape out to be something that's going to be a lot of fun and something that I think, well, I don't know if it will like continue to be this way as the years go on, but I think hopefully this is the start of, like you said, some reintroduction to a lot more organized play and
yep, definitely. I think that's a really big part of it that's exciting to me. Pretty much just any more pieces we can have plugged into the overarching, the overarching, piece that is organized play. The more stuff we can have held up within it, the better. So just really excited. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, I think we're definitely working through a period of time where Magic does feel a little bit rudderless in terms of, I guess, of its former identity of like, what does it mean to be a Magic fan, wanting to travel the world and whatever that old adage was for the Pro Tour. I think that this is a good beginning to bring back some identity to the larger world of Magic and organized play.
Definitely. So I'm really excited that these are coming. I hope they do well. And it feels like since they like got announced and then we haven't had one yet, I feel like they've kind of fallen off quite a few people's radars, especially the people who aren't, actively really involved in these kind of happenings, the larger competitive space. People who aren't that plugged into that, but I would guess that by the last one of these that we have in 2025, I hope they're going to be pretty big events. Related to that, 2024 has felt like the year of the resurgence of Standard. Wizards of the Coast has put in a lot of work, I would say, and that might feel weird for me to say, but I'm going to say why here in a minute. But it has shown rewards. I mentioned it in the last episode, but Mark Rosewater has recently said they're very happy with the state of Standard. All their numbers are up across the board, all that kind of stuff. So Standard seems really healthy again. How do I think Wizards of the Coast has directly impacted this? Number one, it does feel to me like they have slightly, I would say purposely, cranked back some of the power level of some Standard sets. They have kind of changed the axis of kind of what matters. it feels like when Standard kind of was going through a downtime, it was a really weird time where just like you always had to be doing something. Threats always mattered. Every single one of your cards did 6 things, and you never ran out of cards in hand because even like all of your lands were kind of drawing you cards. All of your cards were cantripping. You know, so many cards had like enters the battlefields effects that had a major amount of mana worth of effect. So you always felt behind if you were removing stuff. I'm sure there's still some of that now, but me now looking at some of the stuff that's in Standard, some of those decks, that feels different to me. I think the rotation changes we had, they did a major overhaul of the rotation schedule that took effect this year. I think that'll be a boon to the format going forward. I hope people don't get tired of it and immediately kind of tap out. It's not irrelevant, I don't think either, that they have it was an RCQ format. It was a regional championship format at least once this year. Worlds was Standard this year. That's exciting. That puts more emphasis on the format. And, this next year, 2025, it has the outsized amount of RCQ formats compared to RCQ seasons compared to other formats. I think that'll keep the momentum high. People are excited about that. And I think the release of Foundation's a really big deal. I think we're seeing the effects now. People are really excited about the set. People are really excited about playing Standard with the set. I think that'll only continue to not multiply, but continue to matter as we keep going into new Standard seasons that have this same bedrock set underpinning it. I think it's just a really exciting time to be a Standard player.
Yeah, there's been a lot of laser attention focus from all sorts of different fields within the Magic umbrella to get Standard in front of people's eyes, and not only in front of people's eyes, but like very deliberately in a good place. Like you said, with the Standard, with the rotation changes, with the introduction of Foundations, with the attention to where we're putting it on the schedule in terms of organized play, it's been a very good job that they have done over this past year of making Standard a flagship of the company again.
And I think it's just kind of, it's hard for me to define even what they've done or how they've done it, but the vibes of Standard are just different to me right now. It's been a really long time since I have been actively looking at Standard deck lists and going, wow, that's so cool. If I had a little bit more money, I probably would have 2 Standard deck lists, one for me and one for my wife, Jen, and, trying to make it out to Monday Night Standard or F&M and that stuff kind of fairly consistently because the format just seems slick right now. It's just something about it is a little bit different. I haven't been trying to find space in my schedule and budget for Standard in a really long time, and now like the drive is there for me.
I think honestly you hit on it with the design. I think that's part of a big part of it is, and it is more subtle in terms of like what that does to the meta. But I think the design of cards and how they have reshaped or rethought how they want to do power levels in Standard has changed. Not only like what Standard is like, but also the motivations for people wanting to play, because like, great players want to play good formats. And when you have people like Kibler, people like LSV praising like the new limited environments and things like that, that changes a lot of the perspective on it. But also like the perspective has been changed for them because the cards are actually like functioning in a different way and making a more welcoming environment. And like you said, it's not just powerhouse 6-paragraph card after 6-paragraph card, getting to the point of like Pokemon TCG and stuff like that, in just terms of how powerful cards are in. And I think there are still kind of some mythics and stuff that are like that, but sure, yeah,
a lot less rares like that, less uncommons even like that. It's been a nice change. Dan, what was our next really big thing that happened this year?
The next huge piece of news that we have this year is obviously the Commander format overhaul. We had the big changes in the ban list, and then, of course, the complete handing over of the format from the private entity formerly known as the Rules Committee over to WotC and the research and design team.
Yeah, it should be really interesting to see how this turns out. It's a new era in the time of Magic the Gathering's most popular format. I suppose we could say probably by far most popular format at this point in time. it's a fan-made format that's made a really far direction. I mean, it's the main way that you and I have interacted with the game for a really long time.
I mean, it's changed the course of the game for everyone, regardless of whether or not they play it.
Yep, exactly. And I don't know. It is so weird and hard to talk about this because it has been a decent amount of time since this change technically happened, since the ban and strict announcement, and then soon after the handing over of the format to Wizards of the Coast. But and I think a lot of wounds and pain from that is still kind of fresh. And
sure, but you're right. We really haven't seen the effects of it yet.
Yes, exactly. Like the effects that have happened are like competitive EDH is like kind of different now. And it's like a less powerful format because some of its most powerful cards were banned. And other than that, it's been like radio silence on the Wizards of the Coast front, which like I'm not really surprised by. They're figuring it all out. I'm sure it was quite a sudden thing for them too. And it's like even now it's a weird time of the year. People are busy. We just had MagicCon Vegas.
Like the end of the year for them is such a huge time in terms of like, crossing all the P's and Q's for financial things and stuff like that. And also planning for the new year. Not to say that this isn't a huge part of the planning, but
they also take a good chunk of like December just like off, like December into early January. They just have kind of almost a company wide, like everyone takes several weeks off, which kind of slows things down too. But I think this is one of the really big pieces of news this year that kind of happened, and maybe some people have kind of already forgotten about, but we'll have probably outside of maybe like if Standard can keep up its momentum, that's like maybe a bigger news piece, but as far as far-reaching implications for the future of Magic the Gathering, the Commander format going in-house, I think, is about as big as it can get. I'm still personally a little pessimistic about it. I know there's a lot of hope to be had from the fact that they're trying to set it up as a more of a community-run format still, even though Wizards of the Coast technically owns it. A lot of interesting stuff there with the panel of people from the community from a wide range of backgrounds that will shuffle in and out over time. The current list is not set in stone. Some people will leave. Some people will come back on. I think some people will probably not be re-invited, and some people will probably be invited perennially. So it'll, I don't know. This is still like the thing that happened this year that I still don't really know how to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we said, nothing has really happened yet. We've taken the Mana Crypts and the Dockside Extortionists out of our deck, but I think that was always destined to be a pretty quiet part of the equation. Like, people are obviously extremely upset when it happened, huge shakeup, blah, 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 blah. But people move on. People are like, this is just a casual format. People are going to continue to go to their LGSs and play Commander in whatever way it happens to be legal. The part where we get to, that you said that you were more worried about in terms of like, does this change the way that cards are designed? Does it change the way that we play EDH or the way that the rules are structured and things like that? There are still really huge questions that we don't have the answers for that will be coming over the next year, I would assume. But again, yeah, they want to move slowly. They're not really in the office right now. And this was a surprise to them in September, I want to say. So yeah, it was like a pretty recent thing. I'm sure, like with the way that they plan for things so many years out, this is certainly not something that they're anticipating having on their plate.
Yep, definitely. So I guess our next thing here, new B&R structure. Well, not necessarily a new B&R structure. We got a new B&R structure mid-year. I want to say it was in June. I'm checking my sources. It was in August. They changed the band structure to more closely align banned and restricted announcements to the start of like regional championship and regional championship qualifier seasons. I think that has been for the likes of Modern, Pioneer, Standard. That seems very positive to me. We have since then kind of seen like a banning in October, a banning in November, and now this really big ban in December. I think the October and November stuff were a little more like Arena, Standard, Best of One, emergency bans, and Alchemy emergency bans. Okay, whatever. But where this has kind of seemed to have had a big... So going into that change, the ban and restriction announcement we had was one that was implemented in May of 2013, which they kind of moved them to like a yearly schedule when like the fall set comes out and rotation occurs, specifically like for standard. Was going to be the really big focus, and they've kept that focus for standard as well. But they also said there was going to be like extremely rare mini ban windows 3 weeks after a new set is released. Well, I don't think they ever use that, even when it feels like they kind of quote unquote should have. I think maybe like Grief was banned, right? Maybe using that window, or maybe not. I don't even recall. I can't quite
remember, to be honest.
But they very quickly realized the problem with that in June of this year when they announced the Grief ban, the Amalia and Soria ban in Pioneer, the Grief and Nadu ban in Modern, the Urza Saga and Vexing Bubble restriction in Vintage. They changed the tenor. The problem with the old B&R and somehow also the new B&R, combined with the actual decision making in said B&Rs, since we've moved off a schedule where there's pretty much just like a ban and restricted announcement when they feel like they need one. Okay, it was that for a while. Before that, there was a ban and restriction announcement every set. And it feels like for a while there, we kind of had a ban and restriction announcement every set too. After whenever we feel like we need one, we'll announce that there will be one, and then there will be one. It feels like now that they're actually on the schedule. They're on the schedule, but they're months apart from each other. Like we said, we just had one. It's mid-December. The next one is not until March. That's a quarter of a year away. Combined with that, some of the actual decision-making in said banned and restricted announcements, it has felt like the new scheduled, never going to try to do emergency stuff again, not flexing on this schedule, combined with the actual decision making in said B&Rs has like really left some constructed formats as like sitting ducks this year, like Legacy for the last 3 months, Modern for much of the last 3 months, Modern when they were basically not, they held and waited until August to ban Nadu when it had been out for quite a long time already, since I think June. Yeah. I mean, that feels like that's not that long of a time, but that was the entire more or less Modern RCQ season. So like, because of no emergency bans, sticking to this schedule for nearly an entire RCQ season, Modern was just like a sitting duck format where everyone knew Nadu was absolutely the best deck. You were kind of silly if you weren't playing Modern in your Nadu in your Modern RCQs. No one really liked it. And then everyone knew when that August ban announcement finally came around, Nadu was going to be banned, and they had been playing and working on this kind of quote unquote like fake timed format this entire time. And that's how Modern has kind of accidentally felt too, ever for the last several months. People were hoping that the One Ring would maybe be banned in August, because everyone said, I bet when Nadu and maybe Grief are banned, the One Ring will be the obvious thing to do. And boy, howdy, they were right. And the same thing happened with Legacy. Grief was banned in August, and even then, a lot of people were saying only banning Grief out of the Reanimate deck will not be good enough. They were right. We're banning Psychic Frog, and so I don't know if that's something they can like fix unless they get more aggressive with their decision making, which it seems like they wanted to do with the most modern update. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question of just how aggressive they need to be on these ban announcements, or if we need to maybe go to a schedule where they're happening a little bit more frequently. But like you said, it leaves formats in this situation where people are just waiting for months for the hopes that the formats are going to change, and they have been dragging their feet so much. Like we said in the last episode, it puts so much pressure on each one of these ban announcements to be good and to make some meaningful changes to the formats, that when you see the no changes to my favorite format announcement, it can be soul crushing for so many players, because these we have such incredibly powerful cards that are dominating formats, and we're just taking a really long time to take action on them. And I can totally understand that there is something to be said for formats solve themselves to a certain degree in terms of like they solve the problems of their formats, they figure out how to take care of the one ring problem, etc. But sometimes the one ring problem is like honestly too much and does need to go, and it can't be left to the Terra Sunders or the exercises of the world.
So now we wait and see, I guess. That is kind of the tough thing about the new schedules, is just like we talked about on the last episode, as I'm sure we'll be talking about in this upcoming interview with Brian Coval on the back half of this podcast. The legacy bans were maybe a little bit less impactful, or, you know, they went a little less hard than people would have liked. And will that bite them in the butt, or will it be just fine? Regardless, if they didn't go far enough, and now Eldrazi or some other unknown deck or known deck that was just a little bit better than people thought, maybe even Reanimator, you know, if those decks end up too good, then, man, Legacy is once again just a kind of a sitting duck format until March. If Mox Opal turns out to immediately be way too good, then Modern is just a sitting duck format until March. You know, it's just kind of not the best.
To be WotC's advocate one more time,
yes,
there is something to be said, obviously, for the stability of taking a light approach to these things, rather than being like, well, we can just ban this now, and then in 3 months we'll unban it. Because obviously, like, people invest money into these decks. If you've invested a lot of money into your Mox Opals, into your One Rings, etc., the volatility of the mindset of WotC being, well, we can just unban and ban things as things go in and out of the format, it creates for a very problematic, obviously, like, trust between consumer and WotC in that situation. Not to say that this is like the perfect solution either, because obviously there's plenty of vitriol from Magic players in the community towards WotC in these bannings. But yeah, okay,
there's
certainly some middle ground to be struck.
I've been all negative Nancy about it, but like you were saying, even in their own justification, when they were talking about what they wanted to ban from Boros Energy, right? They were very considerate in their decision making about, you know, the fact that people had probably already spent quite a bit of money on getting Boros Energy cards. They don't want to just blow that up. They would like Boros Energy to still maybe be a modern viable deck. In the same vein, I think there's a lot of things to be said about both keeping formats consistent, you know, so people don't just lose their investments. And also there is a lot of upside to be had from the fact that, okay, we know this is the way the format is going to be until March. Cool. We don't have to worry about my Nadu deck. I invest a ton of money in it and I'm ready to go play the RCQ, and suddenly, boom, it gets blown out of the sky and I'm out $1,000, right? It helps people a lot with, even if it's obvious that insert Eldrazi payoff card, you know, Kozilek's command. Even if Kozilek's command becomes an obvious ban in Legacy come March, at least people know what they're getting into, right? If they choose to play the Eldrazi deck for the next several months. But I think our final remaining point here, it's kind of been a year of art problems for Magic the Gathering. The art world of Magic the Gathering, it kind of feels like something that's kind of off there on its own, chilling, hanging out. You hear about it when a piece of art's really good, or, you know, there's been some outlying, like, personal problems with artists that have rightfully led to them being shown stage left. You know, that kind of stuff comes up from time to time. But this year it's felt like Wizards of the Coast has had art problems. There's been plagiarism issues with some of the published art that ends up in the game. There's been AI accusations flying all over the place, which is frustrating to me, because especially so much of it is just like so verifiably not AI. Actually, people are like hurting more than they're helping. They had an iconic artist, Giancola, very publicly quit and decide to stop working with the game, which there have been plenty of notable Magic the Gathering artists that have quietly left the game. There's been 1 or 3 of them that have been a bit more outspoken, but Giancola very loudly denouncing, you know, Wizards of the Coast and everything they do and how they treat all of their artists, I think is something that's perhaps going to haunt Wizards of the Coast for a while now. So it's not the year of art problems, but it has felt like an year of art problems.
I certainly wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't label this as being like the biggest news item of the year. But looking over our show notes and the past episodes that we did this year, getting ready for the episode, I was also surprised. Like, oh yeah, it's in
a shocking amount of them, because there was like the Trouble in Pairs situation.
Wayfarer's Bauble.
There was the Wayfarer's Bauble situation. There was some people accusing, Wiley Beckert of AI work. For granted, it was her work on a D&D cover page, but no, it is kind of just hard to draw hands with colored pencil at really small size. You wouldn't know that though, because you don't know how this works. You've been taught a heuristic of, if the hand looked weird, it's obviously AI. No, she's drawing a sub quarter of an inch hand on something that with colored pencil. Come on.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you and I think are probably a bit more tuned into the art side of Magic than the average Magic fan. But even if you're not, like, this is inevitably something that you have heard about multiple times this year. It has been, such a huge part of it. And also there has been a couple instances of, Wizards very blatantly using AI art in their advertisements. Yes. So which I think is like definitely been a big spark for the sort of like artist AI witch hunt, which is a shame because those things are entirely unrelated. Like, it is certainly, I hate to throw somebody under the bus, but it is certainly some intern over at WotC who was like, I am not getting paid enough or maybe at all to do this work, so I will certainly AI prompt children sitting in front of a TV or something like that. I mean,
and I think it's just certainly something too of like, Wizards of the Coast has had a lot of layoffs this year. Last year, Hasbro, Larcher, is a very real world where like that got subcontracted out to someone else to get this piece of art, and they were given that deliverable and someone said post it and they didn't look that close, and then other people looking really closely noticed, oh, this is obviously AR art. Overworked people are going to do what they got to do to keep their jobs, right? It's 100%, it's a tough spot to be.
You said before that we have seen many artists leave the game or leave WotC before. Rebecca Gay is like, I think, one of the most like prominent in my mind of her being like one of my favorite artists of all time in WotC's roster, and having her fade away from the game.
She got busy.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. But I mean, the quiet part of that is obviously also that WotC is not paying her enough to keep her from doing other work. Yes. It's a big ramp up to see Gene Cola and the amount that he went into detail over this. It's been quite a wild ride this year in terms of the Magic art.
So we've got a year of art problems. The new B&R structure having its own issues and its upsides and its downsides. The overhaul of the Commander format, the resurgence of Standard, and the Magic Spotlight series being introduced. Is that how you can summarize a year of Magic the Gathering? Of course not. So much other stuff happened. Exciting stuff, disappointing stuff, saddening stuff, top to bottom. It was a crazy year. And it was very interesting looking back on the whole year. Like you said, very interesting to look back at all of those headlines and thumbnails and the descriptions, and even listening a little bit to some older Herald's Horn episodes when I was preparing for this stuff. I was like, man, a lot of stuff happens in 2 weeks. A lot of stuff happens in a year. So, hey, thanks for coming on this ride with me so far, Dan.
Hey, it's been fantastic to be here. The fact that we're doing the 1 year right now, if you had, like, when you told me that, I was like, certainly we've been doing this for 5 years. I feel like it has been ages ago since we talked about any of, I know, pardon my French.
Yep.
I like, hard to believe, looking back, all of the things that happened in a single calendar year.
So let's go ahead and move on to the other part of our little year in review show. A little more hyped up. It's time for the Herald Tour Awards. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our favorite sets of this year. Emma also put in her selections. She was originally planning on being here for this episode, but she woke up today not feeling very well. So Emma, you are here with us in our hearts. Emma said her favorite set of the year was Foundations, but also Bloomburrow. I think two very good choices. Bloomburrow, very cute set. A lot of really fun designs. Bloomburrow felt like a bit of a design shift to me in moving away from some of the most complicated stuff and moving back towards a little simpler, older version of Magic that I really recognize. And Foundations is much the same. And that is why Foundations is my set of the year. I think if you have been listening to this podcast at all for the last 3 months, that would be no shock, no surprise whatsoever. Foundations is the set that, for the first time in a very long time, feels like a set that just gets to the absolute middle of what Magic the Gathering is to me, what I enjoy about it, the stuff that I fell in love with a decade plus ago. So, I mean, Foundations, even you remove the stuff about cool, it's this really highfalutin, high concept set that's going to be in standard for a really long time. I just love looking at it. Every time I think about Foundations, it makes me happy. It's my obvious choice for my favorite set of the year.
Yeah, truly, I think between the two of those, Foundations and Bloomber, I think they are just both such a hugely fresh breath of air in the Magic ethos this year. My favorite set, though, unfortunately, I'm going to go on record as saying is Modern Horizons 3. I know. Sending your hate mail. Oh, I shouldn't have told people. Did I tell people this episode or last episode to rank who's your favorite and who's your least favorite?
Oh,
if it was this episode, no longer send those in. No, don't send those in anymore. I'm so sorry. If I had to summarize this year for myself, it was the year of Vintage Cube. I've been playing so much Vintage Cube this year. Not that I don't know if there was any more or less than any other time, but I've been tweeting a lot more about it. And I have really, really enjoyed the additions of Modern Horizons 3 to the Vintage Cube. They've been so much fun. And Modern Horizons 3 was a really fun limited environment as well. So yeah, I am very regrettably giving my pitch to MH3, my most hated series.
I think that's extremely fair. I think even if you look outside of even, there's some really egregious power outliers. It's had some weird effects on Legacy, on Modern itself. There's something to be said about the dangers and frustrations that I have with designing direct to Modern sets. But I mean, there's so many sick cards in Modern Horizons 3 outside of the problematic stuff. And even the problematic stuff, powerful Magic cards are still cool. I like casting powerful Magic cards.
I will go on record as saying is that I am a big Modern Horizons hater. Modern Horizons directly made me quit playing Modern, which was a format that I loved for many, many years before it was a thing. But yeah, I just think the individual cards themselves have been a lot of fun to play with. Like Nadu, maybe not so much, but so many of them have been fun to cast and fun to play with.
Man, I somehow already forgot that Nadu was like a Modern Horizons 3 card.
I was going to say that even the most powerful cards are fun, and then I rememred Nadu was one of them. I was like, oh, all right.
Yeah, actually, never mind.
I will use
take that back.
Slightly less wide brush for that one.
So those are our favorite sets of the year. A little bit of a harder one for me. What was our favorite card this year? I had to think about this for a while, and I came up with an answer that I still don't think I'm super happy with, but it's the one that jumped out for me of like, I narrowed it down to like a list of 10, and I just kept looking at this one and saying, all right, I think that one's for me. And this will tell you a lot about my inclinations of how I would play Commander if it wouldn't get people to want to like strangle me in the street. My favorite card of this year is from Foundations. It's a rare Phyrexian Construct artifact creature, Scrawling Crawler, a 3-drop 3/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player loses 1 life. Hey, I'll take a better Howling Mine any day of the week. I like drawing cards. I love helping out everyone else. Everyone else can draw a little Magic the Gathering card. But I mean, hey, I give you a card, you're drawing other cards. Well, you can pay for that. I love this kind of stuff. I will assume now that I've said that I love Scrawling Crawler, the co-host ranking is back on. So go ahead and put Dan back at the top of the list.
Yeah. Peek behind the curtain. Before we started recording, Callahan told me that this was going to be his answer, and he referred to it as saying that he thought people were going to think it was a cop-out, which I truly don't understand what you mean by that still.
I think it's just like not that exciting. I think there's a lot of exciting Magic the Gathering cards I could have picked. Like, some of the other cards on my list were...
You really felt like people were going to be like mad at you for it, though.
No, not mad at me, but... some of my other picks are like some crazy Modern Horizons 3 cards or Sire of 7 Deaths and that kind of stuff. To just turn around and be like, I like Scrawling the Howling Mine with upside.
I like the waifu Llanowar elves. That's my answer.
Emma's answer was Null Drifter. The colorless 7-drop 4/4. When you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. It also has Flying, Annihilator 1, and Evoke for 2 and a blue. Just a huge colorless Null Drifter. I would love to guess this card. I somehow have not yet.
You haven't? Oh, it
no,
really is a pleasure.
I'm sure it's real good.
Is it a cop-out if I do a top 3? Because I couldn't pick just one.
I will
pick
allow
one if
you
force me
a
to.
top 3,
Okay.
and then you have to pick one of them.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I'll pick one of them for you, and that will be your favorite card of the year. How about that?
So I think what might be my top one, but I honestly felt like this was a cop-out because I felt like this was boring. Okay, maybe you do understand this. Okay, I think my top pick might be Ajani Nakatl Pariah, the new flip Ajani from Modern Horizons. That is 1 and a white for a 1/2 legendary cat warrior. When it enters the battlefield, creates a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. Whenever one or more other cats you control dies, it flips into a planeswalker. The back half has a plus to put a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control, a 0 to make another Savannah Lions, and then deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target.
Insane!
If you control another red permanent. The first time I activated that and I had another red permanent, and it like the player window highlighted on MTGO, and I was like, I can hit a player too? Are you kidding me? That was what pushed me over the edge. Yeah. I don't even know what the ultimate does. I've never activated it. I've only zeroed and had a great time. -4, each opponent chooses an artifact. Oh, it's a balance. My other favorite card. All right, maybe we sewn it up.
It's not quite a balance. It's like
not
a.
Quite, but if you
I forget what that card's called, but yeah, another iconic weird white card. Yeah,
Cataclysm. Is that the one?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. My other picks were 6. I'm a big fan of 6. 2 and a green for a 2/4 Tree Folk Legend with Reach. When it attacks and mill 3 cards, put a land from among them into your hand. And as long as it's your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have Retrace. Very fun spell. Have used it to cast many fun things. And then my last pick is I had to pick. Oh.
The Johnny's really close to a Cataclysm. Cataclysm makes you choose a land instead of a planeswalker, and then blows up all permanents rather than blowing up non-land permanents.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay.
And to pick one non-MH3 card because I felt like I would be too much of a fanboy at that point. Delny Streetwise Lookout, one I kind of forgot about.
Card.
But very fun card. I have had many fun times in CDH playing this card and having people be like, wait, no, I can block. No, you can't.
You cannot. What does Delny do?
Delny is a 2 and white for a legendary human scout 2/2. Creatures you control with power 2 or less cannot be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. And if an ability of creatures you control with power 2 or less, Dockside Extortionist, Orcish Bowmaster, the list goes on, triggers, that ability triggers an additional time.
Sick card. I love making like little dudes unblockable, and I love making my little dudes stronger. What's not to like?
It's very cool. Yeah. Getting like double Esper Sentinel triggers feels so good in your heart.
This is, Delny was just like, I always forget that it's not just like combat. I think of it as like combat triggers, but no, it's just any ability that would trigger from anything with power 2 or less that you control. Yum. So from that list of cards, I am going to call Ajani your top card of the year.
Yeah, I would say that too, probably.
Ajani's so sick. What a sick card. It was a card they looked at banning out of Boros Energy.
Of course, that's the one that I thought was the shoe-in for the ban, because I don't know. Like I said, I don't keep up with Modern very much, but as a person who's cast this card many times, it is just so incredibly hard to beat. It's like Minskin Boo for 2 mana, you know? Like, it does the same sort of effect of, like, you have to deal with the Planeswalker and the creature that it creates.
Yeah, like, makes a dude, and then it's also a creature. Yeah,
if you kill that Savannah Lions first, you're going to make yourself more upset.
Yep. Exactly. So those are our favorite cards of the year. Scrawling Crawler, Null Drifter, and Ajani Nakatl Pariah. And then last but not least, what was the worst set of the year in our opinion? Emma said Assassin's Creed. Yep. I can see it. Weird little set. Technically modern legal, but like everything about the Assassin's Creed set just felt not half-baked, but like scared, which like I'm fine with something not being that ambitious, but it's just like the Assassin's Creed cards came out. The people I know who were excited about Assassin's Creed were like, cool, that is a reference that I recognize. That card is not that exciting to me though. And that's kind of how the entire thing felt to me. Modern
the cards
legal.
are weak.
Why?
It felt easy to ignore.
Yeah.
Like I have not really absorbed any of the cards in it at all, and it didn't feel challenging to do so. I don't ever see people play them. I played against one Assassin's Creed casual EDH deck.
Yep.
And honestly,
I
it was just like
I
a
have
different
not
effect of another card I've seen before.
I have not even played against that. Like the closest I've gotten is that they made an Assassin's Creed Najila, and I bought that because I wanted a different art Najila, and I forget the character's name. I have played her game though. And I just wanted a different Najila because the Warhammer 40K one costs $1 billion.
Does it really? I think that one's so ugly.
People are really into 40K, man.
Yeah, I
What else
suppose
to
that
tell
is
you?
extremely true.
So that was Emma's choice. For me, it came down to 3 sets entirely for different reasons. I also Assassin's Creed, and then Modern Horizons 3 was kind of on my radar, mainly just for like a lot of the reasons why I said when you said it was like your favorite set of the year. I kind of just hate the entire Modern Horizons concept. This one has felt particularly egregious in the wide-ranging effects it's had on Modern and Legacy, and even Commander to some extent, but that doesn't matter as much. Take any set, just throw it at me. I don't care. But I kind of discarded that one pretty quickly. And then my sneaky contender, which has ended up being my choice, is Murders at Karlov Manor. Just the most weirdly misguided creative set I can think of in a really long time. It's technically set on Ravnica, but you wouldn't really know that because everyone and their mom is here. There's a weird murder mystery that wasn't like explained very well through the cards. I thought the story itself was pretty good, outside of the weird creative effects of the cards, but I think like the set was almost trying to tell too complicated of a story than you can tell through a set of Magic the Gathering cards. I think it kind of suffered from that. And
it's a criticism I often have of sets, and one that I don't know if is like super justified, because like it's certainly a thing where the information is out there, right? If you want to know what a set is about, they put out really lovely publications where you can read about it. But I do feel in my heart that you should be able to glean at least a certain amount of the story from the cards. And yeah, I felt the same way about it. It just felt like some sort of like Fortnite skin on Magic cards, almost, of just like it felt like a very bland surface level story that did not ask you to really delve too much deeper into it.
And I think like my complaints about the set from like a card perspective is just like it's just nothing to write home about, but not in a good way. Like the set actively bored me. I could not make myself pay attention to this set, and that is maybe the first time in Magic the Gathering history that has happened. It happened again with me this year with Duskmourn, but it's just like the creative of the set did not appeal to me. The mechanics of the set did not appeal to me. The characters present in the set did not really appeal to me. I just could not make myself pay attention to this set. And it's not surprising that basically the only cards that are worth money or that have a high EDH rec rank or anything like that, except for stuff that was reprints in the first place, is the Surveil lands. This set is like saved from a success standpoint, I think, by having the first objectively extremely powerful new set of lands we've had in a very long time in the Surveil lands. But otherwise, I mean, Vein Ripper was very relevant for a second. War Leader's Call is going to ruin a lot of Commander games over time, and obviously Delny is super sick, but like past that, this set was just, it was like offensively boring to me, and that's how it ended up as my worst set of the year. Just a confluence of factors.
Yeah. The real sin of it all, I think, is that like you said, the Surveil lands are the shining light of the set. I think they have changed Magic largely over the past year that they have been out. But you could copy and paste that and put it in any set, and it wouldn't really like make or break your believability. The believability that it came from that plane or something like that. It's just a generically good idea that you could slap anywhere, and it doesn't really matter.
What's your least favorite set of the year, Dan?
I think it could easily also be Modern Horizons 3. I hate Modern Horizons so
Your favorite
much.
And least favorite set of the year?
No, because I would throw it. I would
honestly,
trade in
I would
every
respect
single
it.
good time I had.
I would respect it.
I would trade in every single good time I had casting 6 or a Johnny Nicodle Pariah to have that product not exist. But if I'm going to pick another set, and I do honestly think that I do not like this one more so than Modern Horizons, Outlaws at Thunder Junction, I think is like... So much of the conversation about Magic over this past year is Magic cringe? Is Magic a laughable thing? People pointing to the SpongeBob secret layers, etc., being like just too silly to be cool anymore. But how does an Oko and a cowboy hat get the pass? You know, like the concept of it is so dumb and so surface level. Another set that just like I couldn't care less about the plot of it. Like I don't care why all these people are in the same plane and wearing cowboy hats.
Yep. Yeah. It's. I think if I was like personally less into the set, it's like aesthetics and stuff itself, and some of the card designs, it easily could have been up there with Karlov Manor for me. I totally get it.
I think it's legitimately embarrassing.
Fair enough. I just like a little cowboy hat. What can I say?
I think there were some good ambitions in the set. I enjoy any 3-color set. I enjoy them exploring the shards or the wedges or whichever ones they happen to be taking a look at. But I think the cards are largely forgettable. They're silly and not in a fun way where like Bloomborough was silly and like lighthearted and fun. It was silly in a way that like, you know, it just brings up the jumping the shark question. Mm-hmm. Are we too far out with the cowboy hats on Tiny Bones? I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think that's the end of the Herald's Horn Awards, which is to say us just talking about what we liked a little bit. So I guess it's time for us to go to the one part of the show that's left. It's the time for the co-host notebook.
Are we going to do that again?
No.
I was going to say nothing's changed in the last hour since we recorded the last one.
You didn't make up a second made up thing to talk about?
I don't know. I can talk about what records I bought.
Oh, you can.
Oh, I know. I already did that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's about all we have for this half of the episode. There's a great interview coming up. I do got to say, like I said, we're recording this like a week and a half before it's going to go live because there's no way I'm dragging Dan and Emma into the booth and stuff on Christmas week. There's no way I'm dragging myself to the booth in Christmas week.
Who's even going to play Magic over the next week? There'll be nothing to talk about.
Exactly. There'll be nothing to talk about. So, but in lieu of Dan having to talk about anything, making up anything for a second fake co-host notebook, I just want to say I just finished Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. If you yourself have read it, hit me up. I want to talk about it. I have no one to talk to about it yet because I have a couple people to talk to about it, but not that many people as of today have read a 1,300-page book in 11 days. So I'm alone. I'm so alone. Talk to me about this book. Hopefully a week and a half from now when this goes live, more people will have tackled that. Like 25 days seems like a much more reasonable timeline. No, 22 days seems like a much more reasonable timeline to set yourself to finishing that book and successfully do so. Unlike me, where it was the only thing I could think about for much of the last 11 days. And most of whenever I did not absolutely have to be doing something, I was reading that book. So
yeah, Cal texted me about being pressed about needing to finish 300 pages in a night of book. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Dude, it was, I loved it. But as I was telling you before we started recording the last episode, it's just like, it stopped like my brain's obsession with getting it done and being over and finished with it and seeing the end. Eventually, like around yesterday morning, stopped being fun, and I was still enjoying the book, but I'm ready to think about anything else. And now I am free. So that's all we have for this episode. We have a great interview coming up. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you have had a great holidays, and we will see you in 2026. Bye-bye.
Bye, chat.
I have the job of a child.
And welcome back. Welcome to my impromptu studio here in Wilmington, North Carolina, hundreds of miles from home. But I could not pass up the chance to chat with the one, the only Brian Coval, better known as BoshNRoll. Welcome to the Herald's Horn.
Thanks. It was nice of you to travel all the way to Wilmington so we could speak. I really like when a host makes the effort for me.
I probably flew like directly over your house on the way here. So, it's
right.
like the thought that counts, So, Brian, for those of the listeners who may not know, all those people who play Commander or whatever, who may not be familiar with you or your work, what is it that you do? Who are you?
I am Brian BoshNRoll Coval. I host the BoshNRoll channel on YouTube, where I play non-rotating constructed formats 5 days a week, primarily Legacy, but I go up into Modern and Pioneer and down into Vintage from time to time, Pauper, Pre-Modern, Penny Dreadful. I don't know.
Wait, have you played Penny Dreadful on the channel?
I did it once. It was actually kind of cool. Yeah.
It's a really fun concept for a format.
Yeah, it technically rotates though, so I don't know if I'm allowed to do that anymore.
Oh, yeah. Like the cards rotate in and out as they become worth a penny or worth more than a penny.
Correct. Which means the metagame from last season bans cards because Penny Dreadful players are buying them, and then they become too expensive for the format, and then they rotate out and they're allowed back later. It's actually kind of cool.
It's like the perfect B&R system, really.
Honestly, yeah.
Just automatically good enough to up a price. You're done. And you can never play any new cards either because no one drafts on Moto anymore. So you're screwed.
I thought like Flesh and Blood, or maybe an older game like Legends of the Five Rings, worked in a similar fashion. Like whichever hero won Worlds was banned.
I think that's Flesh and Blood does something very similar. I know where it's literally just like at their major events, like decks or certain combinations of like decks and their leaders and their weapons or something akin to that. They like gain points. If they gain enough points within a certain amount of time, they're banned.
Cool.
Which that's simple and clean.
Yeah,
I would have gotten the One Ring out of Modern faster, maybe.
Yeah, almost immediately.
Well, speaking of banned and restricted and all how that kind of stuff kind of works, Brian, I wanted to bring you on to talk about the Legacy format. There was the B&R a week ago, roughly from when we're talking now. It'll have been a little bit longer than that by the time the episode comes out. But first of all, before we actually go into what happened, I would kind of I want you to talk a little bit about how you felt Legacy was before the ban and restriction announcements. Like, what kind of state was Legacy in 9 days ago?
It wasn't great, I'm going to be honest. The Grief Scam Reanimator deck really broke, I think, around March last spring. And it was very clear to everyone who plays Legacy that Grief needed to leave the format. And then Modern Horizons 3 came out over the summer. And Wizards of the Coast did the thing where a new set came out. Let's see what happens before we ban any cards. And Modern Horizons 3, believe it or not, did not contain any hard counters to Grief.
Wait, no. They put Vexing Bobble in the set. No.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So if you get a turn, you can turn off some of what the deck does.
Yes. If you, but it doesn't stop them reanimating it. So.
Right. It turns off your surgical extractions and force of wills when they just go into and reanimate for Atraxa instead. Yeah. And not only did Modern Horizons 3 not answer Grief, but it added Psychic Frog, a card that played even better than Dreadhorde Arcanist, a card that is already banned in Legacy for previous sins. So we got this 3 months where Grief and Psychic Frog were both legal, and Wizards has settled into this habit of only ever really banning one card from a deck at a time in Legacy, which they probably have some advanced philosophy on and like policies. They're not just vibing over there. I do trust the people doing their best with what they got, and it was very clear that Grief needed to go. It was then very clear Psychic Frog needed to go. Then they only banned Grief the next outing, which meant that Psychic Frog was legal all through Eternal Weekend season. That was the whole fall through the winter. And during that time, the combo sickos also figured out that Vexing Bauble was for them. It wasn't against them. It was for them. And decks like Mystic Forge combo could now just wait for Urza's Saga to pop and tutor a Mind Twist against all blue decks, and then just go off on turn 3.
If it like got in their own way, they could just cash it in for a card. Oh no.
Yes, at any point you could just sacrifice it and draw a card. Just crazy design of that card from an era where no card is ever allowed to be bad. Like Chalice of the Void, the second one is kind of bad. Trinisphere, the second one is blank. Sphere of Resistance, Thalia. Like, these cards have costs in multiples, or they do nothing in multiples, where Vexing Bauble is just nothing of the sort. And it was designed for Modern, where maybe a deck like Elves or like Collected Company combo, like something quaint, could use it to shut down scamming Solitudes on you and break that up. Like, maybe that is appropriate for Modern, but Legacy, Doomsday adopted it, Mystic Forge combo adopted it, Show and Tell adopted it. Like, it was not being used to turn off combo decks. It was being used to turn off Force of Will and Daze and Surgical Extraction against combo decks.
And this is, and Legacy is, correct me if I'm wrong, but Legacy is kind of a format that relies upon and has kind of been balanced around the idea for a while that, like, well, Force of Will exists, and Force of Will can stop the worst of the worst if, you know, in the like the combo degeneracy kind of window, right?
Right. The number of cards that Force of Will is keeping off the ban list is probably in the dozens. There's so much nonsense you could do in Legacy, and it's balanced against anyone who wants to register a blue deck could just stop you in the main. Like Oops All Spells, Goblin Charbelcher. There's a bunch of decks that are designed to send a win on turn 1. And why wouldn't you do that if you could? Well, if you have to mull to 5 to find the 4 mana and the perfect combination of cards to send a win on turn 1, how much could you have left to protect against a Force of Will? And you're about 40% to have a 4 of in your opening 7, so 40% of the time you're going to lose if you just send it like that. And, you know, that's a balancing factor. It's at least something you have to think about. And when that is not something you have to think about anymore, the sickos go nuts.
And that makes sense. And it's not even like, you know, it would maybe be different even in that case too, if like blue wasn't such a color that you kind of want to play already in Legacy. Like if blue was some weird outside thing, then maybe Force of Will wouldn't be as good as it is. But when you get to play Brainstorm, Ponder, new tools like, you know, Tamio is getting really popular. Obviously, Delver has been extremely popular for a long time. It's not like blue is some kind of weird outlier thing. If you're trying to do something on turn 1, you are 50% plus or whatever to have a Force of Will mage sitting across from you at the table.
Right. And Force of Will is a bad deal as a Magic card. Spending 2 cards to answer 1 card, why would you want to do that? And the answer is because that card's going to kill you.
Yeah, and you do not have to have any mana to do it.
Right. Your last life total, your last point of life, or that Thassa's Oracle trigger, or whatever it is that's ending the game, is worth more than 2 cards. But most cards are not worth 2 cards. So it's not like Force of Will is just blue decks get it, free and easy. I would love to not play Force of Will ever again in my entire life. That sounds good. I want to play with Prismatic Ending and Swords to Plowshares and like creatures that bounce off each other and we figure it out. But there are the people out there, and power to them. I like combo decks too, and I like that Legacy facilitates for combo. I'm not saying combo is bad or shouldn't exist. Quite the opposite. Combo should exist in all the forms it does, but it does need to be balanced around something, even if that something is all the blue wizards with their Force of Wills.
So this recent B&R announcement came around, and kind of like you were saying, there's maybe some two high level problems. One, the Reanimator decks were perhaps not beaten back enough. They banned Grief, but at the exact same time, more or less, they got Psychic Frog, which is just an incredibly powerful, flexible threat that not only could kill you just kind of naturally by getting really big and getting flying and all that kind of stuff. But it even helped out the Reanimator decks because, you know, kind of the downside of Reanimator is supposed to be, oh, I drew my Atraxa. Well, I'm not going to be able to entomb it. How do I fix this problem? It became, oh, I discard it to my Psychic Frog and my Psychic Frog gets bigger. Oh, brother.
Yep. And Psychic Frog just naturally provided a juke against any sort of hate. If your opponent has graveyard hate, you just stick your Ophidian and bury them in cards. And if you can't cast your Entomb because your opponent has a Rested Piece or a Leyline of the Void or whatever, you could discard that Entomb to make them die twice as fast as your frog goes from 1/1 to 2 or 1/2 to 2/3. And same in all the Stompy matchups, the decks that used to just go faster, the Ancient Tombs, the Chalice of the Voids, the Blood Moons. Pyrogoyf is not bigger than Psychic Frog. That it's just not going to happen. If you Blood Moon them and freeze up all the lands, that's just stuff they could discard to Psychic Frog to make Frog kill you faster. All those 1-drops stuck under Chalice of the Void, discard them to Psychic Frog. It just did basically everything a deck like that could ask for, and it was already the best deck in the format before Psychic Frog was printed.
You know, embarrassingly, until you just mentioned it, I forgot. Like, I was only thinking of Psychic Frog as like, you know, 1 and a black, 1/1, discard a card, +1/+1 counter, exile stuff from your graveyard, get flying. Is that how you get the flying? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Does it fly? Okay. I entirely forgot that it just also has Curiosity stapled to it, just defaultly. I forgot that part.
Oh yeah, that's very important.
That's very important. That makes the card much better than I was thinking of it in my head. But yes, then there was also Vexing Bauble. The combo mages were too good with Vexing Bauble. The blue mages got to have too much fun with Reanimate, so we had to have a banned restricted announcement. Psychic Frog banned. Vexing Bauble banned. Is that what you were hoping for? Is that what you would have liked? Is that, or we're happy now? Legacy is all hunky dory. That BoshNRoll is hopping into a Moto League right now.
It's about 40% of what I wanted to happen.
Okay, so I thought that's very few. That's a very low number.
Yeah, if only two things were going to go, those were the correct two. I was hoping for a bigger shakeup. Like in the very same announcement, Modern shifted by 7 cards, 3 bans, 4 massive unbans. I was looking for something in the same tune for Legacy. I think that Nadu could leave the format. I think that something from the Eldrazi shell, probably sowing Mycospawn, could leave the format. The problem with the format when we had Psychic Frog was games were determined somewhere around turn 2. And it doesn't mean they ended. It means they were determined. Like either Psychic Frog started connecting, which tells you your opponent can't answer it, which means you're about to bury them with cards and they can't do anything about it. Or maybe you assembled Nomad's Encore plus Nadu, and the game hasn't ended, but you flip 4 cards now. You flip 4 cards on the next upkeep. One of them was a fetch land, now Dryad Arbor. Now you have even more cards at zoom, zoom, zoom. You're not winning that game. Then, of course, Entomb Reanimate. Vexing Bauble into the One Ring was something that multiple decks did. The games were just being decided on turn 2 because the format had to either play Psychic Frog or dumpster so hard that it could ignore a Psychic Frog before it started burying you. And a turn 2 Psychic Frog starts drawing cards on turn 3. So you got to be way ahead before that starts. And the whole format just coalesced around what's the most dumb mess I could do on turn 2. And that's not fun. Well, it's fun in its own way.
It can be fun.
Yeah.
It would maybe be a little bit more fun if that dumb mess wasn't also being protected by Vexing Bauble or whatever. But
Right. And I think it's important in all formats for different archetype pillars to exist. And the entirety of mid-range and control did not exist in that previous format. And I'm a little bit biased because that's just the type of Magic I like to play.
Yeah, you're the control mage. You're the Ponder Keep guy.
Right. And I know there are people listening to this or leaving comments, typing anger comments right now. It's like, oh, well, is it so bad that blue's not on top for once in all of Magic's history? It's like, sure. Yeah. I get that. Or, you hate playing against control. That's fine.
But blue was on top. Blue's in Psychic Frog.
Right. Yes. Doomsday is a blue deck that splashes a triple black card. Psychic Frog decks are all blue. Yeah, blue was still on top. It was just in a like really gross, abusable way.
Yeah, Ponder wasn't on top. Can't Ponder not be on top in Legacy for once?
Right. But just like the entire idea of playing something like Maverick or Death and Taxes or Cradle Control, just these mid-range Green Sun Zenith packages or mid-range white packages or whatever, using Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath as a win condition. The game going long enough to cast something like Narset Parter of Veils. Like, it was inconceivable. And that's just an entire wedge of the universe gone from a rich, deep format like Legacy. And I just wanted the format to be open back up a little bit so we could play Magic in that entire spectrum of ways.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It feels like, much like Modern Horizons 3 has managed to, in many ways, reinvent Modern, it feels like it kind of did a lot of the same number on Legacy, which I guess it's going to do because it's a lot of extremely powerful cards that they're putting in all at once. But, you know, this cards we're talking about, like Sowing Mycospawn, many of the cards that have made Eldrazi a better deck than it was, but especially Sowing Mycospawn and Kozilek's Command, and Psychic Frog and Vexing Bauble. All this stuff came out of MH3. So it kind of sounds like, not that you want to go back to a pre MH3 Legacy or whatever, but you wouldn't mind shoveling out as many MH3 cards as possible to get back to some kind of Legacy where they aren't just like messing up some of the traditional, like this archetype's here, this archetype's here, this archetype's here, rock, paper, scissors, not even rock, paper, scissors, but you know what I mean. Would you say that MH3 is like bogged down some of that archetypal diversity? Is that the problem?
Yes. Historically, okay. Modern Horizon sets have done a really good job of putting backstops into eternal formats. Mm-hmm. Things like Endurance, Force of Solitude, Negation. Fury, Force of Negation, Force of Vigor, Plague Engineer. There's all of these things that slap the hand that was reaching into the cookie jar. Like if you're the one up to no good reaching into the cookie jar, if you're a deck with all X-WUDs that share a creature type and no room for a removal spell, you're up to no good. News. Plague Engineer is perfect. Right. Like that sort of, like what could a deck possibly look like that's all X-WUD creatures and no room for a removal spell? Probably some nonsense combo deck. Glimpse Elves, which is a cool deck, but you're up to no good. You got to be honest with yourself when you talk about that. If Force of Negation, we talked already, like you're about 40% to have a 4 of in your opening hand. Decks went from 4 Force of Wills to 4 Force of Wills and 1 or 2 Force of Negations. Now it's closer to 50-50. It's not even a weighted coin flip anymore. It's just a coin flip. Or weighted against. If you're one of those turn 0 send it decks, hope it works. Like those all slowed the format down and increased interaction. But then things like Vexing Bauble turning off the interaction, Nadu speeding things up, Psychic Frog speeding things up. All of these new cards, Eldrazi there's a lot going on with Eldrazi that is more complicated than just speeding things up that I have thoughts about, but the format got very fast and not really about interaction as much as it was about shoving your stupid thing harder. And that's just, I played the format the whole way through. I was trying new decks. I top 8'd Eternal Weekend with a pretty exciting way to sideswipe the format in Phyrexian Dreadnought tempo, which was also a Psychic Frog deck because it had to be. But it was a Psychic Frog deck that was well positioned versus Vexing Bauble decks, which, you know, there's room for creativity. And there were like 6 or 7 solid decks in the format. They were just all really good at determining a game on turn 2. And if your deck couldn't do that, you were out.
Yep, that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, and I get why that wouldn't be very fun either. And so basically what you're getting at with Modern Horizons 3, it did a lot better job of adding threats rather than answers. To like boil it down really deep, where in the past some of these sets have added in a lot more of just like nice stuff around the edges to help keep the format a bit more honest. This one is really put the pedal to the metal.
Right. And Legacy, we banned Ren and 6. We banned Ragavan. Like, Modern Horizon sets have put some threats into the formats before, but it's way more answers. And Modern Horizons 3, nobody's playing Flare of Denial. We're playing all of the threats, and the answers didn't make it, except for Consigned to Memory.
Well,
which is insane.
And like, if anyone was ever going to be playing Flare of Denial in Legacy anyway, I feel like it's just some deck that has the latest deck that's figured out how to break Narcomoeba. Like, Narcomoeba is the card that works with Flare of Denial, not someone doing something honest.
Yeah, I did try a deck with a bunch of Baleful Strix and Ice Fang Coatls early on, and Flare Denial just kind of fair bug. You gotta try stuff when you release a video every day.
For sure,
some fun
for sure
rabbit holes. Yeah,
for sure.
That deck wasn't very good. Let me tell you.
Was it post ban that you tried it?
Oh no, this was like right after Modern Horizons 3 came out.
It's a new world. It's a new world. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to bring it back.
Yeah, time to return.
Turn 2, Baleful Strix. Turn 3, cast your Uro. They have interaction. No. Flail of Denial backup.
Sacrificing Uro to counter a Swords to Plowshares on the front part of Uro that was going to die anyway may have just changed my life. Now that you planted that seed.
Oh no! What have I done?
It's only sometimes even correct to fight over the front side of Uro. It's like a control mirror situation where that would even matter, that you need that thing gone so bad you won't even let them unearth it or escape it once. But that spot, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I hope you get to live that dream one day. So, you said you didn't get all of the bands that you wanted, and stuff like Sowing Mycospawn, stuff like Kozilek's Command that maybe make Eldrazi too good, or insert other things here that you maybe would have preferred being banned. I guess if people really want to hear your whole opinion on that, they can go listen to the latest episode of the Eternal Glory podcast. You really go in on that one. However, I know it's only been a week, but has the new Legacy been shaken out into anything? Is Eldrazi the boogeyman as could have been predicted? Is Nadu holding it down? Is Death and Taxes finally back? Has anything happened, or we still kind of waiting? Or
yeah, things are moving, and Eldrazi is the top deck right now. And right behind it, according to MTG Goldfish at the moment we're recording this, the second deck is Temur Delver, which was a deck that nobody was playing because there was no reason to be any color except black in your Days Wasteland tempo deck when Psychic Frog was legal. And that tells kind of a story, at least an interesting starting story. Like, right now, the Legacy metagame, we've got Eldrazi, Temur Delver, and Red Stompy all at like 6.1, 6.5, and 6.9% of the metagame, according to MTG Goldfish, which are pretty close, pretty competitive numbers. And then Nadu is at 5% after that, Dimir Tempo at 5% after that, Dimir Reanimator 4% after that. There are no numbers that are like 23% of the metagame and then 7% after it, but they're all really close. And all of these, which is something that is common when a format changes dramatically, these are all old decks that are familiar.
Yeah. I was going to say Temur Delver being number 2. Oh, someone just doesn't know what to do, and they already had all the cards. They're just playing Temur Delver again.
Exactly. Eldrazi made no change. Red Stompy was a Vexing Bauble deck, but it was playing it was a viable deck before Vexing Bauble was printed. We just go back to Chalice of the Void. It's fine. Nadu was untouched by the bans. Dimir Tempo, you just replace your Psychic Frogs with Tamios and Bowmasters, you carry on. Grixis Delver's back with Dragon's Rage Channeler. There's another Nadu deck, the Natural Order Elves version, Stifle Not Sneakacho, Oops All Spells. There's not a single new deck anywhere here, which I'm not surprised by, because this just happened and people are going to try the decks they like, the decks they know. The first thing I did was register some 4-color pile built around Uro Titan and Nature's Wrath. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, perfect. Let's see how it works. And how did it go?
I think I went 3-2 in the first league I tried. Got
your play points back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, got clowned by Nadu, if memory serves, and I lost to Mystic Forge combo in that one. That deck still exists. It just doesn't have Vexing Bauble. It felt more reasonable. I felt like I was interacting in meaningful ways, and they just like kind of got ahead in that one match we played, rather than I never had a chance here, and this is embarrassing. One thing that definitely is still true from that Control League I played against Eldrazi, and I took it to 3 games, and they were on the play in game 3, and I passed my second turn with 2 lands in play, and they went Lotus Petal, Kick, Sowing, Mycospawn, and then I had 0 lands in play after playing 2 turns of Magic, which is the play pattern. Like, Sowing Mycospawn is the card that concerns me most about being oppressive to those mid-range and control strategies, and you can't interact with triggered abilities on cast in any conventional Magic the Gathering fashion. So I think that card is a little egregious and offensive, but maybe there being one card in one deck that really kicks the crap out of control is fine for the meta game. I just don't like it. And I'm giving it time to breathe and determine if it's like we played a Mycospawn game, that was bad, but it's fine any other time. I don't really know yet, but obviously just having 0 permanents in play after playing 2 turns of Magic was not fun.
Definitely. And okay, listeners, if you don't know, I'm going to read Sowing Mycospawn here really quick, because it is kind of like something that's so fun to me about Legacy is that, like, yeah, Brainstorm, really good. You get to play your Ponders, you get to play your Uro. We all know these are extremely strong cards. I don't think a lot of people would look at Sowing Mycospawn and be like, that is potentially a bannable card in Legacy because it's so miserable. It's 3 and a green. It's the Void, so it doesn't actually have a color. And then it is white and a colorless for the kicker. You can kick it if you pay 1 and an actual colorless mana. The fun little diamond. Whenever you cast this spell, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Seems pretty good for a Ayavu and Ugin, Eldrazi Temple, somewhat of fun of land deck. But most relevant, when you cast a spell, if it was kicked, exile, target, land. It is kind of wild to me that, you know, someone paying 6 mana for this card, you know, pay the 4, then pay the kicker to effectively what? Wasteland you, strip mine you, I guess, can be that good. Man, Legacy's wild.
Yeah, and there's just like a combination of factors there where the Legacy card pool contains Wasteland. So the front part of Sowing Mycospawn, even without kicker, is going to kill a land most of the time. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, because they could just go get a Wasteland, blow up your non-basic because you have 2 duels in play or whatever.
Right. And calling this card a 6-drop, like maybe in Commander, I could see it in just like generic green decks. Like, this is my Primeval Titan, and I don't actually play for Eldrazi Temple, for Eye of Ugin, for Lotus Petal.
Yeah,
for
definitely. Yeah, all of your lands tap for 2.
Right.
Like, sure, you can only have 1 Eye of Ugin, but you can go Eye of Ugin, Eldrazi Temple, Eye of Ugin, Eldrazi Temple, Lotus Petal. You're basically there. Yeah.
Yeah, or do something that generates an Eldrazi spawn on turn 1, and then next turn, Lotus Petal, kick, Sowing Mycospawn could happen immediately. It just happens very quickly, and every land in those decks is worth 2 mana. You think of this as a 2-drop, and then it's a 3-drop with kicker, rather than a 4 and a 6 in practical terms. Right.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's the crazy thing. Like, the Legacy card pool enables stuff such as that. I don't know, it's pretty sick, but it's also pretty annoying, I guess, for you.
Yeah, and like I said, maybe it's fine and it just affects me specifically because that's what I like to do. Or maybe a 3-mana Hill Giant with 2 separate game altering triggered abilities on cast that can't be interacted with by counter spells is too good. I don't know. A
little too good. Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's just like, you know, even if since it's a cast trigger, you know, even if you technically, if you really wanted to, could try to interact with the Sowing Mycospawn itself so they don't get a 3/3 or whatever, but then what? You're a blue deck? Cool. And I don't need a double Wasteland you or whatever. You know, they could go get Caverns of Souls or whatever and name Eldrazi. Cool. Gotcha. You're never doing that again. You thought
Yeah.
you were interacting? Too bad.
Yeah, it is half of a Primeval Titan. It's a 3/3, and we'll call it 2 mana in the decks that actually play it, that uncounterably gets any land. And these Eldrazi decks, I actually think this part's cool, and I wish that, like, I kind of just wish it didn't have kicker. If it was just a hill giant that did this, and you get one wasteland and then we're good, or you get Cavern of Souls, you get Gaia's Cradle or Blast Zone, or all the things that these decks play, I think that is cool. But why, I don't know, why does this uncounterable half of a Primeval Titan also need a kicker that obliterates even more things?
You know, I'm picking up what you're putting down, Brian. I can understand your frustration with sowing Mycospawn. And to steal your own line about banning it, you know, if you're gonna ban it, no one cares. It's a Modern Horizons 3 card. It's not like it's not like a potentially problematic card that's been around in Legacy for a really long time. So it's kind of part of the furniture and people are used to playing with and against it. And so there would be like some emotional stuff there, you know, soul of the format type of stuff to talk about. It's a card that's existed for not even 6 months yet, I don't think. Just it's kind of free to get rid of it.
Right, and that's why I was pushing so hard for this would have been a great band announcement to really shake up Legacy, because the things I want shaken up, Psychic Frog, Nadu, Vexing Bauble, something from Eldrazi, Sowing Mycospawn, top of the list, Kozilek's Command, I also have heavy thoughts about. Those are all just rares or less from Modern Horizons 3. We're not even talking about cards you could have had for a year. None of these cards cost more than like $10. I think Psychic Frog was $10 and the rest were all dollars. This is the cheapest you're ever going to shake up Legacy. Like banning Ancient Tomb, that card's like $80. That would affect some people. Forget about City of Traders. It's like $350 card. Like, if you're going to try to slow down a deck like Eldrazi somehow, hit one of these cards that are just a few bucks from a set that just came out, rather than the things that we all understand from the past or cost a lot of money from the past.
So, Brian, are you looking forward to the next 3 months of Legacy?
I am. I wish they did more, but that doesn't mean I'm not excited about the opportunity to figure out what we have.
You still get to play Legacy now that isn't about whether or not Psychic Frog is going to come down on turn 2 and what that makes every game into.
Right. And like Reanimator's still in the format. We still have to bring our surgical extractions and fairy macabres and the things we were doing. But now, once we stuff their Entomb Reanimate open, they're not going to resolve one of the most premier aggressive card advantage threats in history right afterwards. I played against a Reanimator deck. We had a great match where I stuffed their early Reanimate, and then they followed up with Ledger Shredder. That's what people are trying to do now to simulate the experience of Psychic Frog.
Yeah, it's like a flyer. It can grow. You can not loot away, but pretty much loot away some of your best stuff if you draw it. Ooh.
Right, and that game was actually really interesting because they had their Ledger Shredder in play for a long time. I think it got up to 5 or 6 power at one point. They were getting card selection. We were going back and forth. It was conniving, but also it was only conniving and not just like at some point I could remove it before my life total was 0 and mostly neutralize the effect it had had up to that point, which is what a creature in Magic
is supposed to do.
Especially an evasive 2-drop. Like, we're not talking about like Sarah Angel or like some 5, 6, 7, whatever that,
you know, really something that's supposed to end a game. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Now Reanimator just has to like own, I'm going to put a track site in the graveyard on turn 1. What are you going to do about that?
Right.
type of thing. That makes a lot of sense. And you are looking forward to playing so many Uro decks for the next 3 months until March comes around. And unfortunately, at long last, Wizards of the Coast will have to ban Uro, Nature's Wrath, from the Legacy format.
That would be a disappointing and shocking outcome. But I have more faith than that. I think Uro is safe. I think Uro, believe it or not, in like 2020. So yeah, that's when Theros Beyond Death came out. So that first year with Uro, people were talking about banning that thing. It was legal alongside Oko, And like the Uro Oko shell was pretty busted, but it wasn't Uro, it was Oko.
It was the other 3-drop Simic card from the same time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It makes a whole lot of sense. Look, I'd ban Uro. You can't be drawing cards again in life and putting lands into play at that rate. It's not fair.
I took time out of my night to come on your podcast and you say like that. Come on.
Okay, fine.
This interview's over.
This interview's over. Wait, your publicist is in my house. Ah.
That's why I made you go to Wilmington. That's where my publicist lives.
That's where your publicist lives, so they can bust into the house and demand that the interview end.
Yep, they have the place surrounded.
Well, Brian, ironically, I think that is about everything that I have to ask you about Legacy. So I suppose we can end it like this. Number one, is there anything else you want to tell people about how you feel about Legacy? And number two, is there anything else that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Nope, I'll just repeat. I am excited that we got enough changes that Legacy feels explorable again. And everyone check out the BoshNRoll channel on YouTube if you want to see the new Legacy and the new Modern. I'm way more excited about Modern right now. And
it got an actual shakeup. Yep.
Yep.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the Herald's Horn.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback, would like to sponsor us, or would like to submit something to the Letters to the Editor segment, email me at editorial@heraldshorn.com. The show is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Cal Jones. The rest of the team is, of course, our co-hosts, Emma Partlow, Dan, better known as Moderately Anonymous MTG, and Lexi, better known as Black Girl Mage. We're having so much fun making this show. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. We'll see you next week.
Callahan Jones lied to me on the internet.
Yeah, I lied on the internet. You got
That's going to be the title of my memoir.
Lying on the internet?
No, Callahan Jones lied to me on the internet. The story.
The day I beat Callahan to death in an alley with a f***ing lead pipe.
That's the title of my second memoir. The part where I'm in jail.
Why? If I did it.
Good joke. I love sports.